Hello and welcome to the High Stakes NASCAR podcast, episode 3 after a show-stopping barn burner from Atlanta Motor Speedway. I'm your host, Mike Bachmann at MV Bachmann, here with Zach Catanzareti as always. Zach, we're just going to jump right into it, man, because we've been waiting to sit down and record and talk about this race. You and I were both working coverage for NBC Sports Digital and Motorsports on NBC, so we were in tandem back and forth throughout this race, just talking about it, and we were just like, yeah, like the podcast this week is gonna be big. So, what an event! Atlanta Motor Speedway, man, just the reconfiguration of the track. It has been an absolute gem for the Cup Series, and we had trucks and Xfinity hit the track. Those races were not particularly great. Xfinity especially was incredibly tough to watch.
For sure.
But we got Cup, and from start to finish, it was just absolutely incredible. So I'll kind of toss it to you just with your takeaways from this race. But Daniel Suarez, man, snaps his 57 race winless streak, dramatic fashion. The 3-wide photo finish, it's everywhere. I was on Twitter, the top 5 trending things on Twitter were all about the finish, all about NASCAR, just incredible stuff to just gain steam to the beginning of the season. What an insane way to end this race. And Suarez, man, when you have Blaney and Kyle Busch, those two drivers who we expect to win, Daniel Suarez coming off of a regressed 2023 season. This is huge, man. What are your takeaways here for just how monumental this is for Daniel Suarez and just the race itself?
Yeah, and to start, I do believe somebody picked Suarez last week. I think I remember saying his name. It was him and Chastain.
Got to give you your credit. Yeah, that was a good
I had to give myself credit because that's really tough to do at a track like that. A lot of big guys didn't make it to the end. But yeah, Suarez, I saw his track record there, and I knew he had a decent shot. And as everyone's been talking about, he needs to have these good runs. We know what season he's coming off of last year, and with back-to-back super speedways, and we're going to talk about a lot of drivers, but Suarez was one who this can go really good or really bad for someone like him. Like he does not want to come out of these first 2 races, even though it's very easy to do. He doesn't want to come out of these races already in a hole. Like he wanted to come out ahead. Austin Dillon, many others who weren't able to do that. And, to come out with a win, take away, the finish and how he did it. Like a win is a win. It has the same amount of points, gives you the same amount of momentum. And I think what spoke most about him, even past the victory and everything Justin Marks said about, his future and where Daniel is right now. I love what Suarez said. He knows that the champion doesn't have one win at the end of the year. The champion never wins race number 2 and then nothing else for the rest of the season. And he knows this season isn't, a done deal. It's not like he can do nothing else for the rest of the season. And we're like, oh, he won Atlanta, so he's fine. Atlanta's going to be old news in a few weeks. And if Daniel gets caught up in a few incidents, if he doesn't run well, qualify well, if he loses a few dozen spots and points and Chastain is kicking ass, we're right back to where we were, a couple weeks ago before the season started. And he's back on the proverbial hot seat. So celebrate it. I'm glad he did celebrate it and ride this momentum into the spring, but also keep your head on a swivel that like you got to stay with the times and bring the competition for next week. And just to speak about the race for a minute, you said it, like it was just amazing. It was an astonishing motor race. It kind of reminded me back when IndyCar raced at Auto Club Speedway in California, just with the closing speeds and the side drafting. Sunday had this type of pack style racing, but it was still in the driver's hands. Like you still watched individual cars making their own moves. Like I didn't feel like anybody was stuck in position. Daytona and Talladega, there are times where you can kind of relax a little bit. Everyone's running in a line. Maybe they're saving fuel. Maybe they're working with their teammates or their manufacturer support. Didn't see any of that. And throwing the handling issues, there was so much movement. And what we saw Sunday was just cars dive bombing and slingshots and blocking and mistakes with blocking and loads of lead changes. Like it really had everything. And I think there was one point in the race, it was the top three Team Penske cars. I think it was Cindric, Logano, Blaney. They were leading 1, 2, 3. I'm like, okay, this is probably where we're going to ride here for a little bit. They're going to want to control the race. They're going to want to maintain track position. And then Joey Logano flies up the inside of Cindric, takes the lead. Cindric slingshots him back to the next corner. And I'm like, okay, this race is chaos. Nothing we've known or anything we've learned about racing and just sports. None of it applies here today. These guys are here to race and just get the lead and keep it. So just from that perspective, it was a blast. And I think from all accounts, even from the drivers who wrecked out, like, Briscoe, Keselowski, Larson, even they were jacked about the race. Like, you never hear that. Those guys wreck out on super speedways all the time, and even they were happy about it. So what an amazing win for the sport. I mean, the stands look great. I worked there from, I think, 2016 to 2021, never a packed house. I feel like from home, at least watching it, Fox was, showing the stands a lot, and they looked really energized. And just for the conversation this week to be about, was this the best NASCAR race of all time? Was this the best finish of all time? That just tells the tale of what we saw on Sunday, and that's why NASCAR is number one. You're not going to see that anywhere else.
Yeah, well, it certainly is up there because we were treated from start to finish, like you said, to a hell of a show. And it is funny that you talk about the drivers as you have the results of the race here on your screen now. And the drivers that did wreck out still jacked up about the finish. I mean, even Rick Hendrick, talking about the damage of all of his race cars, like, does not compare to just how exciting and dramatic, the race was for the fans. And, 2 weeks in, we've got some serious momentum here now entering Vegas. And in looking at Daniel Suarez, kind of bigger picture here, I think it is important that you kind of keep yourself in check because Suarez might have had the most amount of pressure on his shoulders of any driver coming into this season. When you look at Trackhouse and what they were really built on, like, they were built around Daniel Suarez, former Xfinity Series champion, who was really searching for new life in his career, where it almost seemed like he was never going to, find his way into a top tier ride once again, losing those spots at JGR, Stewart-Haas, 2 top tier, teams at that point in time. Failed to, I mean, Suarez failed to qualify for the Daytona 500 back in 2020. Like, this is a driver who didn't even make the Daytona 500 a couple of years ago. So with Trackhouse taking the chance on him and wanting to revive his career, he gets that first Cup Series win in 2022, falls just short of the round of 8. And then, the struggles last year were very apparent. He regressed in almost every category, finished 19th in the standings, average finish of 19th. It was just not great for Daniel Suarez. And that seat was certainly heating up because you look at who Trackhouse has brought in: Zane Smith, hot young rookie; Shane Van Gisbergen, not a rookie. And certainly all the hype surrounding him is
he had
more
wins. He had more wins than Suarez last year.
Exactly. Yeah. Just comes in and wipes the floor. So for Suarez, you certainly had to think that, all the pressure was certainly mounting. And this team in the offseason, they made wholesale changes atop the pit box. They sent Travis Mack over to Kaulig Racing. They brought in Matt Swiderski from Kaulig, who crew chiefed with AJ Allmendinger. And just 2 weeks in, Suarez is heading to the playoffs. So really incredible stuff. I'm going to be interested to see kind of where Suarez is able to run kind of the rest of the regular season, where this team is able to put themselves, because this has some serious implications. I think this is going to have some serious implications as we get to the waning stages of the regular season, because Suarez is one of those drivers who was going to be around the playoff bubble. And that's a playoff bubble driver where one of those spots is now taken. So for those drivers who hover around 14th to 18th, the pressure's just gotten a lot much higher for those guys. Just because Suarez now is locked in and he can now take the rest of this time to get himself right. But, I mean, hats off to Suarez, to Trackhouse. I mean, they're back in the spotlight at the center of the sport. And look, now Suarez has his viral moment of his own, that may have saved his future with the team. I mean, you look at Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez, responsible for two of the, most viral moments of the sport over the last couple of years.
Sure.
Pretty amazing. Trackhouse, everything they're about is awesome. And I really think that the sport is better when they're winning. And to do it this early with Daniel Suarez is really impressive. So got to give hats off to them and for Suarez. But like you said, I think it's important to celebrate it, but also to kind of keep yourself in check a little bit because, we don't know what the future of Daniel Suarez still is, even though Justin Marks has kind of reaffirmed that, their commitment to Suarez is even greater now that he was able to win. But multiple wins, Suarez is going to be looking for more this year. So Chevrolet continues to dominate. We talk about the changes with Toyota and Ford. Chevrolet has won the past 7 races in all 3 series, dating back to Phoenix. So pretty impressive stuff. But man, just an incredible showing across the board. This one's gonna be really tough to top rest of the year. Like we're already talking about the best race of the year. We have another shot at Atlanta in the playoffs. I mean, turn that up to 15, man.
Yeah.
Because with the playoffs on the line, like it's just going to be on an entirely another level if it could even get there. But for Blaney, for Kyle Busch, the 2 drivers that were just that close, I really thought Blaney had it. I really thought he had it, and Kyle Busch as well. Just they got their moment, but encouraging results nonetheless, especially for Kyle, who we're going to talk about entering Vegas for sure. But man, we finally come down from all the craziness that was Atlanta. It was really awesome stuff.
It was. It's going to be really, really tough to top that. If we do top that, whether it's the second Atlanta race or any other race this year, I don't even know how to comprehend what that race would be like, because I've never really seen a race be that consistent throughout. I mean, we talked pre-show here. The whole race was really just the same thing all day long, and it was a blast all day long. You really couldn't keep your eye off the screen. And I loved all the drivers who were up front, a lot of comers and goers, a lot of veterans making mistakes. It's just, it had everything you can hope for in a race.
Yeah. And the biggest thing about the finish was just the respect of these drivers, right? Nobody gave an inch, but nobody got into each other's business, right? I mean, as soon as Bubba Wallace lifted exiting 4 and it was just those 3, I was like, holy smokes. Like we're actually going to get a 3-wide photo finish. And, for those 3 drivers, the caliber that they are, you have Kyle Busch, multi-time champion, still searching for that resurgence. Ryan Blaney, the reigning champion, and then Daniel Suarez, a driver who was trying to revive his career. Just those 3 personalities, honestly, it couldn't have been any better. And just the amount of respect that these guys raced with was awesome to see, and gave us, the best finish that we were looking for. So that too, have to credit the drivers for just being clean and, for the majority of the race, the more so the mistakes that happened. You had Logano who just slid up the track and got wrecked out. I mean, Chase Briscoe looking to get a little aggressive, took a pretty nasty hit to the outside wall. And then, of course, the wreck to kind of start this thing, which wasn't necessarily like the best way to start. I was like, oh my God, like here we go again type thing with 16 cars getting, I mean, majority of them able to kind of continue on and get very little damage, but still to have a wreck like that to start the race, just a sour taste. But it proved to be no reason to be concerned at all because, this one finished better than anybody expected. And I hope it continues to carry into Vegas. Especially when you look at like the one thing that I've talked about and kind of thought about is just like the full speed crowd. Because I feel like we're going to reference that a bit this year. I think it's important because, there are a lot of new eyes on the sport that I think come particularly from that documentary. And to get the finish at Daytona and to now get the complete race at Atlanta, like 2 for 2 for the full speed crowd. I mean, they couldn't have a more welcoming start to NASCAR Cup Series racing, man. It's really been a win-win. And I just hope it continues to carry the momentum into Vegas, kind of put super speedway racing in the rearview mirror for a little bit, and go back to, kind of the bread and butter of what we do here. And I think Vegas is going to deliver. This next gen car, what it's been able to produce on these mile and a halves and the super speedway package, just incredible.
Definitely.
So I really think we're gonna continue to see some good racing. It's been a hell of a start, and there's no reason why it shouldn't slow down now.
Yeah. And just, kind of tying up the finish there, it when you see an accident like that, like drivers were able to continue on. Like we've noticed it these last 2 years with how durable this next gen car is,
I can
but
take a hit, man. Really
yeah,
can. Unreal.
Denny wrecked twice. One
Yeah.
of them, he didn't hit anything, but the other one, I mean, that would have, nosed in the radiator. He would have been done with the
Yeah.
Logano-Buescher incident, and he was
Honestly,
running at
even
front.
yeah, and honestly, even the like the McDowell Byron scruff on
Yes.
pit road, like McDowell salvaged an 8th place finish.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that
Bubba Wallace, I mean, he gave Kyle Busch that bump down the back
yeah.
straightaway, and Kyle made that move that basically Ross Chastain made last week. He
Hmm.
went for the middle when there was still a guy on the other side. It was just done a little bit better, I guess. They were just a little bit more in line.
Yeah.
But Bubba he basically had a brick wall in front of his car. I couldn't believe that car was still hanging on. He wasn't able to run the bottom as we saw, and that basically led to the 3 wide finish because he kind of stalled everybody out behind them.
Yeah.
So big thanks to Bubba on that.
Exactly. Thanks, Bubba. Like he honestly, yeah, like thanks for giving us
Yeah,
that, because without it was probably going to be Blaney to the win with that momentum. But
yeah.
yeah, that's a great point. Shout out Bubba.
Yeah, and another shout out. I mean, he's the guy this season. He's the only driver with back-to-back top tens, let alone back-to-back top fives, and that's something that we probably would not have seen in past seasons. We know he's an amazing super speedway racer. We know he can make it to the last lap. What happens from that point on? It's kind of a mixed bag with him and everybody else. But for there to be 19 drivers in the top 10 finishes in these first 2 races. For him to be the only one with 2/5, that's very impressive. And he's somebody who really needed to start in the green, not just performance-wise, but just mentally. We know how he can kind of trail off sometimes when things aren't going well. And he spoke about how mentally tolling these races are, and how he's excited
Yeah.
to go to Vegas, and he's really good there on mile and a half. So we're going to be talking about him a lot this weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah, Bubba is certainly somebody that I think is going to come up in conversation. And yeah, the consistency he's been able to put together, the mental aspect of the game is so true. And to be able to understand like what these guys actually deal with, and honestly, like the perspective of how hard it is to win. Like you don't
Yeah.
know when your next one is going to be. I always point to AJ Allmendinger in that sense, because his post-race interviews are just full of everything, and the passion that just, radiates from this guy every time he wins, because he's always mentioning, you never know when you're going to get the next one, even if you're winning 5 races a year. Like you just don't know, because the sport has gotten so competitive. And for a driver like Suarez, who 57 races, that's a damn long time. I mean, we talk about Brad Keselowski. His winless streak now is hit triple digits, which is unbelievable to think about for a former
It
champion.
is.
But him too. He's still searching for that to get back in victory lane. And Chase Elliott, he still has a pretty hefty winless streak he's been fighting, even though yes, last year had the injuries, and there's certainly something to account for there. But you know, Chase Elliott is another one. So you just don't know. And with how competitive NASCAR has become, the Cup Series, like there is a reason why it is the pinnacle of American stock car racing, and why you have the best of the best drivers here. So for drivers like that, the mental aspect of running well, especially starting the year off strong, that's huge for a driver like Bubba Wallace. And I do like him this weekend. He was very good in this race. He finished 4th last year at Vegas, and the mile and a half program for 23:11 across the board has been pretty decent as well. So I definitely like Bubba as like a driver who's probably not going to get talked about as much as like a Christopher Bell or a Denny Hamlin, or even like a Martin Truex Jr. for that matter. The Gibbs camp heading into this weekend, because I do think Toyota is going to have something to show. I feel like they've really been, they've been hurt by lack of luck, and just some stuff that hasn't gone their way. But Vegas is a really good rebound spot for them. So With that said, Zach, let's just kind of talk about some of those drivers coming out of Atlanta, entering Vegas. We speak about Bubba Wallace, but I want to talk about Front Row Motorsports. Hats off. Talk about hats off to any team. Front Row deserves it more than anybody. Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland, both of those drivers looked like true, legitimate front-running contenders all day. I mean, for McDowell to park his car on the pole, first time in 467 career starts, is just amazing stuff. A lot of people in the NASCAR betting community, there were a lot of Michael McDowell pole winners at like plus 4,000. So, that was some really, really good stuff. So I shout out to the betting community and all the guys that cashed those tickets. Todd Gilliland, man. I mean, Todd Gilliland controlled the majority of this race, man. Up front, running with championship drivers, and it's just Todd Gilliland. Like, in what world? But 58 laps led, the most by a front row driver in NASCAR, in a NASCAR Cup Series race. Just breaking records all weekend for the team. But man, they have sincerely put the field on notice. The enhanced Ford partnership has really turned this team into a legitimate contender through 2 races. And I know it's super speedway racing, but Penske across the board, like, their speed has been incredible. It's really been night and day in the Ford camp. And I think the sky is the limit for a breakout season for Front Row. I think there's a legitimate chance for Michael McDowell to get a win this year. I mean, if Todd Gilliland can continue to put together some consistency and maybe become more of like a consistent, top 12, top 15 car, challenging for top 10, that's huge for this team. And, I think Michael McDowell he's gained a lot of fans over the last couple of years, just as a journeyman guy who won the Daytona 500, who has always been in position at a road course. And Todd Gilliland, the youngin', just incredible stuff, man. You got to shout out an operation like that who has just always been good, for kind of like that sentimental victory at a super speedway. But man, they are legit. They're coming in, man. It's impressive to see. So you got to shout out Front Row for just an awesome weekend.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned like where their career paths are, it is a fascinating duo, because you think of, a Todd Gilliland, of course, he has, his grandfather raced, his father David in the Cup Series for a long time. He was with Cowbush Motorsports in the Truck Series. The wins didn't come super easy like they did back, in the ARCA West Series when he dominated. That's when I first, kind of noticed him. And being in the Cup Series, for anybody, it's a really, really difficult transition, especially when you're with a mid-pack team who doesn't really have the connections to be top 10 or even better. And for them to have that tier 1 alliance with Penske for this year, it's definitely shown. I don't think it's a coincidence that happened. And then the super speedway program just elevates, tenfold from last year. He's led the most laps this season, across both races. Yes, he's 32nd in points, but he just hasn't, put the race together. He was taken out in a wreck that he had nothing to do with. I think he had some kind of tire issue at Atlanta, and he wasn't able to stay where he needed to be. He's proven himself as a capable front runner, and McDowell's been that for a little while on super speedways. We know he won a road course at Indy last year, but you said it, like he's not known for his Texas 2008 crash anymore. He hasn't been for a couple years. When he was running Staunton Parks, when that whole thing was exploding in the early 2010s like that, that's literally all he had. Then he won an Xfinity race with RCR in 2016. And we're like, okay, there's something with him. He was running some Gibbs races in Xfinity and running well on ovals. And we're like, if he just gets a good cup ride, we can actually see him actually do something with his talent. Yeah. And it's taken a long time. He's been with his team for a long time. And I think that's exactly what they needed. They needed a veteran in that wheel, in that race car for a number of years to build the team from the inside. And Todd came in at a great time, and now he has that experience over the last few years, so he knows what to do with a quicker car. And just seeing him just control the lanes, you mentioned it, like he was up front and he knew what to do. I think he got stuck in the sucker hole one time, but before he knew it, he was leading the inside lane again. And I expect them to have a great performance bump this season. It's all down to this weekend. to get a good taste test on what the rest of the year is going to be, because mile and a halfs, there's not as many as there used to be, but there's still enough to where that makes a big difference whether or not you make the playoffs.
Yeah, and we're certainly going to get a greater indication there because again, like, super speedway racing is what it is, but for them to come out and to show what they have over the course of the first 2 weeks is you can't take away anything from that. And
Yeah.
I hope that it continues to carry into Vegas and we could see these guys continue to run up front and really kind of insert themselves as a serious player in the Ford camp. But I do want to talk about two other Fords who have just had terrible, terrible starts to the year. But Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski, two drivers whose stock is really in the toilet right now. Logano sits 33rd in points, Keselowski 36th in points, which is really kind of technically last because the only person behind him is Jimmy Johnson. So not great company to be with right now.
And David Reagan is ahead of them.
David Reagan's ahead of
Even
him.
run Sunday.
It's not looking too pretty down there for both drivers. But I'll toss this question to you. I mean, who are you more concerned about here, Logano or Keselowski through two races?
I'm honestly not very concerned about either. Like, I know we talked about RFK in the these last couple of weeks. I have very high hopes for them, very high expectations, not even hopes.
Yeah,
and Brad's had good speed these first 2 weeks. Definitely not show offy with running up front. He only has 5 laps led. His loop data isn't much to write home about. Only a few stage points. He's definitely happy to be moving on to downforce tracks these next couple months. But I have no doubts at all that he can bounce back from that. But it's just tricky because he didn't win last year. I definitely expect him to win, but he was one of the guys who wanted to come out in the green, as I mentioned. But I think he's definitely capable of coming back. Joey, 100%. It's a different story from an Austin Dillon, he's deep in the red, and that's where he was last year, and that may very well be where he stays. He really needed a good start to the year. For Joey, it's a different story. I think his performance has been very show-offy. He's been fantastic this year. He's had the second highest driver rating in both races. He just hasn't kept it clean. He's just been caught up in incidents. One his fault, one not. He's somebody who can turn it around super quick. He's won Vegas before, and Brad's been great at Vegas. He's won there as well. So I don't have many doubts that they're in trouble per se. It's just not what you would expect coming out of two super speedways from these guys.
Yeah, I'm on board with you there. Definitely have more confidence in Logano than Keselowski if I had to pick one of the two, just because of the speed we've seen out of Penske. You mentioned the driver rating. I mean, Logano's had arguably the best car in every single event this year, and he's just he's brought home a bag of rocks to show for it. So,
and he's got luck. That opening lap accident, like we were all like, how many laps down is he going to be?
Yeah.
Like of course, he had to serve the pass-through penalty off the start because of the web glove and qualifying. And we're like, if he doesn't get an like early caution, it could be trouble for him if it just goes long green flag. And then they wreck in the turn 1, and he's on pit road, all nice and safe. And before he knew it, he was running for the lead and up front in the stages. So you do need that luck as well, and he's got some of it this year.
You definitely do. And that's a great point too, because he had everything gifted for him to go his way to get back in contention. And then, unfortunately kind of wrecks himself out of that one. But the web glove, dude, like that, when I saw that report, I had never heard of anything like that in my life. I don't know if you have, or was even aware that something like that, like a faulty glove that doesn't meet specifications, like that seemed like a very hefty penalty to not only start in the back, but then to have to do a pass through when the green flag drops, and probably will get fined this week at some point, as a result too. But that seemed like an incredibly hefty penalty. I mean, I don't know if you have thoughts about that, but I was really surprised at that. And I honestly just had no idea that, something like that would happen. It was just like the most random yet harsh penalty like that we could have seen, I feel like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. The qualifying, sending him to the back made sense because that was only to enhance his qualifying lap, even if it's a thousandth or whatever you gain from, just that little bit between the fingers. And he was barely holding it up to the window net. I don't know, but I think stuff like that is just to keep the teams in line. Like they give out this equipment, and yeah, some of it has to do with safety. They want to make sure that it's fire retardant and all that. And if they never saw the glove, then they don't want drivers just pulling out, random head socks and random shoes and the booties that they have on their heels to keep their heels from burning on the floorboard. Stuff like that. They want to know what drivers are wearing. So I can understand that they're a little iffy about that. Sending him to the back made sense. The pass through was tough because that just kills your whole race. He just happened to get lucky this one time. And then if there's a fine midweek, I guess I understand that. Depends how big of a fine it is. But yeah, they're just trying to control what the drivers are wearing and know what's going on. You're not going to get away with that. You know what I mean? Like they know that that nearly every driver has an in-car camera, and it's literally right in front of the helmet. So yeah, they tried, but yeah, it didn't work this time.
I guess any little inch or centimeter or millimeter they can try and get out to get just that little bit of extra edge, that's what makes the sport.
If Ryan Blaney was holding one, he may have won the race.
You never know.
He just held his hand up, he may have won.
Yeah. 3 1,000ths. If it takes just that little bit, Blaney might be the one in victory lane, and hopefully not DQ'd at the end of that one if they found out.
He may have. I don't know. That would be extreme. Yeah.
That would have been extreme and excruciating to just rip away everything that this race had, especially with the finish. But that didn't happen, so that's all good. But I'm with you on these two. I do think that they'll be able to bounce back, and both will be in the playoffs this year. Both champions of the sport, and both are not going to go out without a fight. So we should get a better indication now with some downforce over the next couple of weeks, and we know both drivers like that a lot. So all good things. But let's talk about Vegas, Zach. First kind of real race of the year. So excited about that. But it's your turn now to jump on the trivia block. So we're going to keep it with the theme of closest finishes in NASCAR history, because Las Vegas has produced a few really good races and finishes. So I want to go back to the 2006 UAW Daimler Chrysler 400. Saw one of the closest finishes in Las Vegas, or it actually was the closest finish in Vegas track history, where these two drivers were separated by 0.045 seconds at the line. Can you name the two drivers and the driver that won that race?
Jimmy Johnson, Matt Kenseth.
That's right. Jimmy Johnson, Matt Kenseth.
Yeah, I wasn't actually a NASCAR fan at the time yet, but later in 2006, I became a fan and remember watching highlights of throughout the season. Yep. And it also helped that I just did a Jimmy Johnson Hall of Fame, his best wins compilation, and I put that win in there. So that was a hell of a run.
I actually remember you putting that in there. So I didn't even think of that. But that was a hell of a run, because Johnson coming on the outside. I mean, he gained so much ground in that last lap and coming over on the outside and just taking that home. The only lap he led in that race. So that was really exciting stuff. And even last year, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, that was the second closest finish, the closest in the new configuration of Vegas. That 2006 race, I'm pretty sure, was the last race on that configuration before they changed the track. So Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, not too far off either. But Matt Kenseth and Jimmy Johnson, the closest finish in Vegas track history there years ago. So that's a good one.
That was a great. Hopefully we get another one of those. I think if Bell wasn't so nice to Larson last time out, we would have had the same type of side-by-side. And thankfully he won the following week to get into the championship 4. But that was a playoff race and everything that's on the line there. But we can get the same thing this week. We can keep this momentum rolling.
I think so. You know, these guys are going to be on their horse, so it's going to be
Yeah.
fun to watch. But let's get into the Pennzoil 400. Take a look at some drivers that we're watching ahead of this weekend. Um, very top of the board heavy for me, just because this is the bread and butter of what we got, right? You're going to see
Mhm.
the elite contenders at the top, I feel like. And I'm looking at Kyle Busch, man. He sits at the top for me. He too has had one of the best cars, you know, through the first 2 weeks. When you look at like Joey Logano and some of these other guys, he owns the best average finish at this track over the last 6 races. That's
Mhm.
fifth place. He's fourth in driver rating over that span. Kyle Busch has been like um concerningly calm, I feel like, through these first 2 weeks. Even his post race after Atlanta, like he seemed happy. He seemed
Yeah.
smiley. He seemed just calm, cool, collected, like not KFB. He just seemed like Kyle Busch, you know? He's not KFB yet. I want to see KFB. I think
Mhm.
we're gonna get a little more of that this weekend because that 8 car has been fast and he has been able to finish and avoid trouble. So going to Vegas, he's got one win there. It's his home track. Chevrolet looking to continue to, you know, carry this steam into this year
Mhm.
because they have, you know, like I had mentioned before, they just have been dominating across the board. So I'm excited to see what Kyle could do. And when you take a look at, you know, Kyle Larson, who is just in like he's on, I feel like, an island of his own when looking at, you know, drivers coming into this weekend.
Yeah.
Kyle Busch is a driver who I think is getting slept on a little bit, especially in the market. His odds right now
Mhm.
are plus 1200.
I
Um,
noticed that. Yeah.
and you look at Kyle Larson, who is just jacked to 4-1, and then Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Christopher Bell, you know, just some of these other guys like Kyle Busch. He's as good as anybody at Vegas, and I
Yeah.
think he's going to have the speed to show for it. So 12-1, you know, and looking at it from a betting perspective, I think that number is only going to get shorter.
Mhm.
So got to take advantage of it while you can. And I think 12-1 is an interesting number for Kyle. But I'm certainly going to be watching that 8 car and seeing if we can get a little bit of mojo, a little bit of swagger back for Kyle, who has been just like uncharacteristically quiet, I feel like, which maybe
Right.
is a good thing, but I love the Kyle Busch when he's you know, when he's got the soundbite after soundbite and we're looking for him to, you know, really say what's on his mind. But I
Yeah.
guess it's a changed Kyle to start the year, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I would definitely expect another Kyle and Kyle show this weekend. I think it's just one of both of their favorite, one of their best tracks. You mentioned his highest average finish in the last 3 years there, 5 top 5s in the last 6 races. That's pretty difficult to do anywhere. Just to achieve that type of consistency across a team change in the middle. He hasn't won here in a long time, but he's coming off a really good start to the season, just with really high speed. And Larson, even though he wrecked out, he was happier than usual last week. And Vegas, 4 top 2s in the last 6 races there, including 2 wins. That's even tougher to do. He's led a quarter of the laps over the
Yeah.
last 3 years there. That's way ahead of anybody else. He often leads over 100 laps at Vegas. But outside of the 2 Kyles, I'll probably look at a Martin Truex Jr.
Hmm.
I think I saw his name kind of somewhere in the middle, maybe 10-1 if I saw that correctly.
Yeah.
He
He's
does
10 to
have the
1 over on DraftKings.
Yeah, so that's decent, and he has the most green flag passes in both races this year. He's been passing more cars than anybody else, and I think that's worth something. He was up front. He was close to winning Atlanta until Suarez, pulled up in front of him, and I guess he got aero tight and he got stuck in the third lane, and back he went. Who knows what would have happened if he was right where those guys were.
Yeah.
But Vegas, he has 7 straight top 10s there, the second highest average finish, and only one finish outside the top 15 since 2012.
That's
Which is,
big.
yeah, that's pretty wild there, and that's a lot of team changes over the last 12 years.
Sure. Yeah.
He's a 2-time winner, so I think he's someone to pay attention to. And then we mentioned Bubba earlier. We know 2022 he had a great run going at Vegas before his retaliation with Larson. That was a real hot streak he was on at that point. And his mile-and-a-half performance overall has been really strong. You think of Charlotte, Kansas. He's always a guy to watch. He was 4th in this race last year. So coming off of those back-to-back top 5s, he's in that right place at the right time, at the right type of track. I think Toyota can definitely mount a charge against Chevy this weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The guy that I'm looking at in the Toyota camp this weekend is Christopher Bell. I think that he has the best chance of all these guys to kind of change the narrative. He was top 5 in both Vegas races last year. He's been consistently one of the best here in the next gen era. And Christopher Bell is just kind of like that one driver that we throw in the conversation of like the elite drivers, but I feel like he doesn't get the respect as much as like the Kyle Larsons, the William Byrons of the world when talking about championship caliber drivers. And really kind of got that sense in full speed. I really became a Christopher, like full speed really gave, I grew a lot of respect for Christopher Bell because he is kind of like that quiet guy because, he's very reserved on social media. He kind of keeps to himself. You don't really know kind of what's going on. He's just quiet. And he lets the results on track to show for it because he truly believes that he can win multiple championships and win multiple races every single year, which is the expectation for Bell. I just feel like when you talk about him in comparison to those other drivers mentioned, it's just there's a little bit of a lack of respect there. But we have to look at Christopher Bell, I feel like, just as much as a Kyle Larson or William Byron on a week-to-week basis because he's got the talent and he's got the consistency. And when it's all said and done, he's going to be the face of Joe Gibbs Racing in the not so distant future. So I like Martin Truex Jr. a lot this weekend as well. I think the consistency and, we always used to talk about Martin Truex Jr. as the 1.5 mile master years ago when he was running for Furniture Row. And even, his first couple of years at Gibbs, but he's had the consistency as well. I just like Christopher Bell a little bit more, not necessarily in the betting market. I think 9-1 is a little short to pay. But when you look at drivers, especially as it relates to fantasy, like for fantasy this weekend, I think you're going for all the heavy hitters. Like I would not waste a spot on a potential like long shot sleeper or anything like that. You kind of had the first 2 weeks to kind of get creative with your lineups and do that. Daytona and Atlanta. Now I feel like is where you deploy the fleet of elite drivers. Your Kyle Larsons, your Kyle Bushes, Truex, Denny, Logano, I think is going to be great this weekend. Again, if he could just find some of that good luck through the end of the race.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to be looking at a lot of top heavy drivers, though Bubba is one of those guys that's kind of mid pack that I do like. Another driver I was kind of thinking about was Alex Bowman. When you take a look at the Hendrick camp, he has a win here a couple of years ago. He's put together some good finishes. He's been very good in the spring race at Vegas, which I think, is there really something to say about that? He was top 3 in the last 2, including that win, like I mentioned. So I think he's a sneaky pick as well to just kind of be on the lookout for, see how this team unloads, or how they unload and how they practice and qualify for sure, and then see how they perform in race trim. But Alex, he's 25-1. I think it's a pretty decent number for him. If you're looking for more of like a long shot Chevrolet, I think Alex is the guy to go for. I will just say this too. Daniel Suarez is 65-1. That seems absolutely crazy for a driver that just won last week. And you take a look at some of the drivers he's priced around. I mean, Eric Jones is 45-1 and Daniel Suarez is 65-1. That's just an incredible drop off, I feel like.
Yeah.
And Suarez, I feel like, has been pretty solid at Vegas. So if you're looking for a real long shot just to kind of sprinkle a little bit on, maybe Suarez has some added value there. But Bowman is the guy that I'm looking at, in like that 25-1 range, to see if he can find some momentum after being a casualty of that lap 2 crash in Atlanta. Didn't really have much to, show from his runner-up at Daytona. But I think Alex is going to be interesting this weekend.
Yeah, Bowman's interesting. I mean, I think overall Hendrick, that was one of the biggest storylines I brought up 2 weeks ago was how Hendrick's going to bounce back from just the total mixed bag of 2023. And, Chase he really didn't get a fair shot, I feel, on these first 2 races, especially Atlanta. He just kept getting caught up in other people's stuff. He got, spun by Chastain, and Bowman didn't have any shot at all. But if he wins that 500, just give him another couple inches. Perhaps it's like a Suarez type of thing where you're coming off a tough year and now you're the name, you're who everyone's talking about, like, oh, this can be his comeback year. And we just don't know where he's going to fall in yet, and that's why they're a big story going into Vegas here. And he has been really good here, and I think he was second or third last year in that 1-2-3 Hendrick finish. And then he won that last lap thriller with Larson 2 years ago. So he's capable of stuff. We just haven't seen that from him in a while. And I love the point you made with Bell. I think he reminds me a lot of Ryan Blaney in the sense that, we don't take him seriously as a championship contender until they do it. And now Blaney, after last year, he doesn't have that issue anymore, because we know that he's able to do anything. He can win any race, and he can win the title. So there's just no questions about it. And Bell's been in the championship for multiple times. He's won under the biggest stressful situations. Like, he had to win multiple times in 2022 to keep advancing, and he won each time. And last year he did the same thing. And I don't know what else he can do to prove it, other than win that title. He had a brake issue at Phoenix last year, but on mile and a halfs like Vegas, like, he's straight up one of the favorites. I don't know how you can look past him. And there's a lot of, I'm shocked to hear Suarez was that low. I mean, I'm just looking at the names who are kind of coming up in front of him, and I'm like, wow, I wonder why he's that low. I know it's a super speedway, but like, he's with a top team. Chastain's nearly won here before. I can't see why he can't at least bring home a top 10. I don't know what the top 10 numbers are, but they're probably a little bit lighter for him.
Yeah, the markets right now are pretty light. We don't have top 10 odds yet.
Yeah.
We got outrights in top 3, so they're a little sleepy this week. It's on a Tuesday morning, but it's all right, because in looking at the drivers, I like how you mentioned Chastain, because Chastain is another driver that I like a lot this weekend. Again, 16-1. I've seen him as long as 18-1, and again, like, we're looking at these drivers early in the week because we feel that their price is going to shift the most. Movement throughout the week in NASCAR, even before they hit the track, is extremely apparent, and you can lose a lot of value on a lot of these guys as the tickets start coming in, right? So Chastain is one of those guys that I think is going to get steamed a little bit. He's 16-1. Joey Logano, 15-1, a number I would bet right now. I already have. That's only going to get shorter for Joey. His results haven't been great since his win in 2020 or 2022 rather, but he's had the fastest car every single week. If he was able to just avoid trouble and not create some of his own, he'd probably be in victory lane in one of these 2 races so far. So 15-1 for Logano was really interesting. And Chastain 16-1, top 5 in 3 of the last 4 Vegas races, led a boatload of laps here in 2022. I think he's going to be another contender. He was strong in Atlanta. And I think Vegas presents another great opportunity for this one team. Why not Trackhouse go back to back? But Chastain at that number, I think is pretty solid. And again, like I mentioned, Logano, I mentioned Kyle Busch a little bit ago at 12. So again, there's a handful. Most of the drivers that you're looking at are really between like that 10 to 22-1 range. But I like what you're getting for these guys, and I think that now's the time to get them, because I think the majority of these guys are going to be bet a lot, and you're going to see that movement happen pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's tough to pick a favorite going into a race we just haven't seen a race like this yet this year. So I'm every driver wants to have a good Vegas and show the entire garage, hey, this is what we got for this year. And there's a lot of teams that are in really difficult positions. A lot of teams are in great positions. I think 4 of the top 7 in points were winless last year, and they're well ahead of where they started last season. But we know guys who started off rough. Tyler Reddick started really rough last year, and before he knew it, he was winning COTA and he was getting top 5s in a row, and makes the playoffs no problem, multiple wins. and other guys, they were not able to bounce back. So some guys want to repeat what they did last year, and other guys, they're not liking where they are right now, and they want to make Vegas the start of a new trend.
Yeah, for sure. This is the time where they can kind of again put super speedway racing in the rear view and really buckle down and see what they're made of. Now that we're getting to the more bread and butter of what we have, and more normalcy throughout the season. So you know, the nice thing about this point system is that it does give you time to really kind of make up what you lost early in the year. And it's nice. I mean, look, for the drivers, it's nice to get two super speedways out of the way,
Yeah.
because it does give you more opportunity to build off of or build on, some of what you lost. But for a driver like Reddick, he was able to do it last year. So it is going to be interesting to see who that has put themselves in good points position is able to kind of keep it up there, because there
Hmm.
are very interesting names up there like Austin Cindric, some of those other guys like Michael McDowell's still up there. Like, can these drivers continue
Hmm.
to kind of keep that? Because it's going to be a tall tale to really look at throughout the rest of the year. But Vegas should be really exciting. So we got a lot of storyline entering the race weekend. I think across the board, you're going to see some pretty good racing. So I'm really anxious to see the kind of product we get, and see kind of how we can carry this momentum into this week and beyond, because I hope it doesn't lose its steam. I really don't think it
Hmm.
is. Vegas has become one of the more exciting mile and a halfs, like
It is.
right up there with Kansas,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
if you're excluding Homestead, I would probably say Vegas and Kansas are right up there as like the two best
Yeah.
mile and a halfs that we go to now. So
Yeah.
we'll see who is able to, get a little bit of luck on their side, and maybe a royal flush in Vegas. That would be pretty sweet. Um,
Yeah.
but Zach, who are you looking at in as far as who's going to park it in victory lane? Who's your pick to win this race?
I think looking at all the numbers and just how they've, performed this year, where they are, mentally with their team, blah blah blah. Martin Truex Jr. I think I feel pretty confident putting his name in victory lane. I loved his numbers. I like uh, his racing prowess, just what he's done these last 2 weeks. We know it's a big year for him.
Yeah,
There's no period. There's no comma, at least at the end of this season. We don't know what's going to come next. So we're talking about a guy who's going for it for the last time, possibly. He's up there in age, and he's totally capable of winning races. But some guys like going out when they're able to win still. That was big for Harvick. That was big for a lot of these guys. I'm sure he doesn't want to have a season like he did 2 years ago when we're like, oh, maybe he shouldn't come back because he's not bringing home the
exactly.
butter anymore. But
Sure.
last year he brought it right back, and he had a great regular season and just tanked in a
Yeah.
big way in the playoffs. So
That
he
was a hell of an implosion in the playoffs last year for Martin. It was
yeah,
honestly, it was
he
really
was.
sad I was very disappointed, as
Yeah,
a Truex fan, from New Jersey. Like, yeah, I was deeply disappointed in that. But
yeah,
all the retirement rumors, like you mentioned, it's just like, yeah, he obviously wants to go out on top and wants to still believe that he can win, and he definitely can. Was more than capable, did it multiple times last year. So Vegas is a good opportunity for him. I'm gonna take Christopher Bell. I'm gonna stick with Toyota, but I'm gonna take Bell to win this weekend. So a little JGR head to head between the
yeah.
two of us. We'll see. It's probably gonna be Denny Hamlin as a result. But
Yeah.
I think Toyota is gonna bring it. Um, I think they're gonna have something to show. It's Vegas has been a pretty good track for them over the years, and
Hmm.
as long as they can kind of get through Larson, and so maybe some of those other, Chevrolets. I think Truex, Bell, Denny Hamlin. I mean, you got to say his name.
Yeah.
Think that think that they'll be able to show up and have some pretty good cars this weekend. So
Hmm.
I like it. I like it a lot. But should be fun. Should be a lot
Like
of fun.
always, we mentioned, half the garage can win this race. So
Yeah, yeah.
after this week, we'll be able to narrow it down a little bit from Ford, Chevy, Toyota, and who's looking good. But for right now, it's like let's see who has what.
Exactly. It's still early in the year, and there's still so many guys that have shown a lot, but it's like how much credibility are we going to give it, right? We
Yeah.
still, I think, a couple weeks time, we're really going to know who the surefire front runners are, who the pretenders were, and who's going to really be able to show up and maintain that consistency, especially through the just the how long the season is, because we don't break until July. Like,
Yeah.
the gauntlet of the first like 2/3 of the year is going to be tough, and it's going to take a toll
Mhm.
on these teams, on these drivers, morality, mentality, the whole nine. Like, this is where champions are born and made, and these are where the top of the drive. This is where the cream of the crop rises. So,
Yeah.
it's going to be a long season, but once we get there, we're really going to know who's going to be showing up every single week and who's going to be getting the job done. So, there are a lot of drivers to take note of. It's a small sample so far in 2024, but as the weeks
Yeah.
go by, we'll be able to kind of chip them off and keep a pretty good record of who we truly think is going to really rise and be championship caliber for the rest of the year. But Vegas is the start, man. It's the start of that. So we're really excited for it. And yeah, it's gonna be a fun weekend. So as we close up shop here, Zach, why don't we just give you the floor to tell people what you're working on and what you got cooking up this week?
Yeah, as usual, the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel. That's where we're going to be giving you guys all the highlights. I will say when I'm cutting the highlight, it's usually the longest highlight. If you look at the NASCAR highlight, the Fox one, NBC one, I usually offer the most highlights from the event. And I did read some comments saying, "Man, this race was so amazing. This highlight should be longer than 12 minutes." That was on like the NASCAR highlight. And I'm like, mine was 19. If you want to see more of the race, you come to NBC.
That's
So I'm
right.
just gonna throw that out there. I try giving as much in there as I can. It's tough when races are that exciting. You gotta be really conservative on what you put in. I wish I can
Yeah.
put in every wild, 3, 4 wide, lead change and all that, but we try narrowing it down as much as I can.
Yeah, it truly tests your editorial
Totally,
judgment for sure.
for
Because
sure.
there's just so much that goes on. So, I applaud you and the PAs for really trying to squeeze everything down to the nitty gritty and getting all the important stuff in there.
Yeah.
But that's all. That's oh, dude, that's funny, man. Cracking up over here. But yeah, Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel. All the NASCAR. We've got some uh, post Atlanta recaps up there. We got a bunch of different content that's going to be coming out throughout the week, not only in NASCAR, but in Supercross. Um, thoughts out there for Austin Forkner, man.
Yeah.
Just with
Yeah.
what an awful, absolutely brutal crash. Watching him get
Mhm.
launched from that bike and landing on the concrete was really scary. I can't believe he walked away from that thing
Mhm.
with how hard he hit and how much air he caught. Um, but they have been updating his condition. It sounds like he doesn't need surgery, so that's all great because he's a great contender. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest stories coming into 250 this year was Deegan versus Forkner.
Mhm.
And with Hayden paying homage with the ghost ride at the end there in his post race, we're certainly thinking about Austin Forkner and hope he can get back on the
Yeah.
bike soon. But Supercross, man, has been so friggin' exciting. So we are going to be continuing to pump out Supercross, Pro Motocross when they hit their season starting up in the summer, and then the Super Motocross World Championship. So your home for that is Motorsports on NBC and NBCSports.com. And for all NASCAR editorial and content, you can head over there as well with all the good stuff our writers and our talent is doing. You can follow me on Twitter at MV Bachmann. I got the NASCAR Xfinity betting preview show. I'm waiting for Xfinity odds to drop. I'm so dreading talking about Austin Hill once again. I don't know how he friggin' won that race, man, when literally everybody else who was on the same strategy
He's
ran out
putty.
of damn gas at the
Yeah.
end. And
Yep.
oh God, dude, like the worst way to end that race. And quite frankly,
Yeah.
uh, I don't understand why Chandler Smith didn't pounce when he did. Like, Chandler was so, I felt like at least he was so conservative there at the end.
Mhm.
Had momentum on the backstretch to just pull out and get the win, dude. I mean, tough. But
it must have
Austin
not.
Hill,
Yeah, it must have not been as big of a run as it looked. I don't know.
it
I'm
looked
not
like
inside
he
the
had
car.
enough
It
to
looked like enough,
at least poke his nose out to the outside.
but
But again, not the one in the car, the one, behind the microphone. So
that's
I
right.
can't make those decisions. But to put a bow on the show and to close out, Austin Hill, still who he is. Whatever. We'll deal with it. But you expect the betting preview show out, one of these days soon. So once we get odds, you can follow the NASCAR betting preview show for all the betting content for NASCAR, the live show every Wednesday on Twitter Spaces and the In Between Media YouTube channel. This show will be up on our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe to that, and we'll have clips from the show as well being posted throughout the week. Check us out on Spotify. Still working to get us out on other platforms, man. That's been a little bit of a headache, but we're working towards it, and we'll get there. Regardless, episode 3 is in the books. We'll be back to talk Vegas and look ahead to the next weekend. But hope you guys enjoy your weekend. You can still come down from the crazy finish in Atlanta. And hopefully this weekend, is as great of a race as we're hoping for, and we can just continue to put on a good show and have great stuff to talk about as a result. But for Zach, Mike, yours truly, we'll be back next week to break it all down and talk about the great sport of NASCAR. And there you go. Who is that?
Go, Frankie Muniz.
Frankie Muniz.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Glamour shot.
Glamour shot for Frankie. A hell of a story. I really hope that he's able to show a little bit of something in Xfinity, because that's
he's back in Phoenix.
Awesome. So back in Phoenix. Hopefully he can put something together, but that'd be great for everybody. The Muniz fans, the NASCAR fans, just an awesome story. Yeah. So Zach, appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thank you.